Hi, you guys. I am so incredibly excited and grateful that you are here today because we are talking about all of the legal pieces that you need in place in your business so that your butt is covered. And I am joined today by my very good friend, Bobby. Bobby Klinck is here. He's in the house. Hi, Bobby.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. This is going to be fun. And trust me, if you're watching this or listening and you're hearing like legal, don't worry, we won't make it that bad. I promise.
See, that's what I really appreciate you and your approach to the legal world is, first of all, you're just a hilarious person in general, and you've really found a way to be yourself while you teach and while you just like lawyer everybody and give them all the goods.
Lawyer everybody. I'm going to start using that. I'm going to lawyer you.
I'm going to lawyer you. Yeah, I was reading your bio and it was like, I use poop emojis. And I was like, or maybe I made up poop emojis. Maybe it was just emojis.
No, I say poop emojis.
You do say poop emojis. Okay. And I was like, and this is why you're my people.
Although I do have to say, I do get nervous now. My daughter, who's 5, discovered, like, she came into my office at some point and saw, like, I had the emoji screen up and she saw the poop emoji. And so now she made me show her how to, like, bring up the emojis, like, on a Mac. And I'm so worried that one day she's going to, like, send the poop emoji to, like, I don't know, somebody on an email or something. But, hey, if it happens, I'm like, hey, it happens.
That's brilliant. She's a smart cookie, that one.
Yeah,
she knows what's funny already. So I would love for you to just share a little bit about who you are and you went to Harvard, you've got this incredible story of how you kind of ended up here in the online space. So for those people who don't know you yet, I would love for you to just share a little bit about this awesome time.
Yeah. So I like to say that I'm an entrepreneur first and a lawyer second. That wasn't always the case. In fact, it's kind of a recent evolution because lawyers traditionally are trained not to be thinking about business and are normally horrible business people. I like to joke that to a lawyer, marketing is hanging out with lawyers, writing articles for other lawyers, and doing random other things, an email that you send out to other lawyers. They kind of miss the part that you're supposed to talk to your audience, not your
Right.
competitors. But so, yeah, I'm originally from South Texas, born and raised. And then, a fun fact about that, I was in punk rock bands in high school and college.
Were you the singer?
No, God, no. I'm not allowed anywhere near the mic because I am tone deaf. They would literally like unplug my mic, so there was no chance that could happen.
Oh my!
I was the bass player. My brother was the front man. He still is like, he can't give it up. He still lives in Austin and is still like doing it. And evidently, he's big in Germany. People over there love it. But so I went straight from that to like Harvard Law School and tried to fit in. And I like to say that for a long time, I played lawyer man and tried to wear a suit and do the stuff that lawyers do. And I always chafed at it. Never quite knew why. At first, I thought it was like the kind of work I was doing or that I wasn't getting enough responsibility. Now, looking back, I realized it was because I really didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like playing that part, playing that role, but it was all I knew. And my story changed. I think it's about 3 years ago now, something like that. A life coach asked me, I was working with this life coach and we're talking about, first personal stuff and then my relationship. And then she asked me the question, I call it the ultimate question. Do you like what you do for a living? And I kind of stammered for a while. And then I said, no. And then she dropped the hammer and said, okay, what are we going to do about that? And it was the first time someone had given me permission to make a change because I'd invested at that point like 15 years in kind of doing what I was doing and I was good at it, but I wasn't happy. Yeah. And so that really kind of was where I started my foray into the online world. Started doing things like appearing on podcasts. That was her suggestion to me. She's like, I could see you going on a podcast and talking to people. So that was kind of how I dipped my toes in the water to start. And then from there, I started really getting serious about it. And I had some failures. I launched a course that I spent $10,000 promoting, made one sale, and she asked for a refund on day 29, never having looked at the thing.
So was it like a 30-day refund policy?
Oh, yeah. Back then I had a 30-day, no questions asked. And she literally said, I just don't have time for this right now. I need my money back. I said, okay. And it was like a course where I was basically combining training and legal templates. And she hadn't looked at it, hadn't done anything. but got her money back. And so I had those stumbles, and really started to find my groove at the beginning of 2018. That's when things really started to change for me. And ironically, even then, like last year, I made a bunch of mistakes. I simultaneously in February signed up for like a high ticket program on how to sell high ticket, and then Marie Forleo's B School, which were taking me in completely different directions.
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
I mean, the high ticket, looking back, it was another like $13,000 or $14,000 venture that I got nothing out of. But when I think about it, I realized, well, of course not, because that's not a blue ocean for a lawyer. Everything I do is high ticket. The trick is making not high ticket. But so that's been my path. And now, it was even like well into last year though, before I really started showing my personality and realized that everybody's a personal brand. I don't care what you sell. If a lawyer can be a personal brand, anything can be a personal brand.
True
And
that.
so that's when I started realizing it and started telling funny stories. The first email I told with a funny story was sent after an event I went to last year, where Amy Porterfield was behind me and photobombed me with like her tongue out. And to my girlfriend my wife, not my girl, my wife, who was not at the event. It was like, I was with Amy's integrator, Chloe, and Amy's in the background photobombing me. And I sent it to my wife without comment. And I sent it like one night, and I wake up the next morning to a text back that says, "Why are you sending me pictures of you with random women?"
You're like, do you know who these women are?
Yeah, all right. But I mean, it occurred to me, of course she wouldn't, right? I mean, she'd heard me talk about Amy because, I've been on her podcast. I worked with her, but she didn't really know them. But it was kind of funny. That was the first story I told in an email. And the subject line was, "Why are you sending me pictures of you with random women?" That was the highest awesome I ever had among men, ironically. Men emailing me back saying they were scared they'd been hacked.
Oh my God.
But I mean, that was the start of where I really started adding my personality. And, I make jokes. I tell kind of off-color things. And now
you're like, hey, it works.
Yeah. And I cuss slightly. And,
Yeah.
I tend not to, use the F word, but, the other ones, you're going to see some in my emails because that's who I actually am.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's such an important lesson in itself to all of you guys who are listening. Like, what happened for you in your business when you started to step into sharing more of your personality?
Oh, I mean, it's no question. So before, I mean, I would send emails and I never got a response ever. Literally, I never got an email back. Now, not a week goes by that I don't get a bunch of people responding with something. And sometimes it's just to say that they loved it. Sometimes it's, thanking me. I get these things. I will often, at least once a month, I get some response that says, "I never respond to these things, but I have to." And it's built a connection with my audience. And now, I think as since we're in the mastermind together, now I'm probably not launching anymore or maybe I'm launching, but not really a traditional launch because now my community is so connected to me. I basically say, "Hey, I've got this product. Do you want to buy it?" And they come and they say, "Yes, please." And that's all because I built a connection with them.
Yeah. And I think that really is like the magic that you've been able to tap into. And I hope that all the people listening to this can really hear that, because people say to me, "Jen, what's the next strategy? How do I grow my Instagram?" That was just in my course community today. Like, what are you guys doing with hashtags? Like, how are, and I'm like, guys, none of that matters if you have no content out there that it is creating that connection. That's having people say, "Wow, this person's in my head. They made me laugh today. They're speaking to me." So I hope you guys hear, like, because some people, like, I have a lot of health coaches like, "Well, the content that I teach is dry. It's very textbook." You guys are listening to someone who is a lawyer.
Yeah, that's what I like to tell people. There is nothing that anyone in the online space could be, teaching, talking about that's drier than what I am, except maybe accountants. I know some others.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But but it's funny. I last week, as I was recording, the same day I recorded your introduction for your episode on my podcast.
Which, shout out to your podcast really quick.
Yeah, it's the Online Genius podcast. It's not about the legal stuff, so don't worry. It's marketing. I basically talk to, interview people like Jen, and then I do my own solo episodes.
So good.
But So I recorded my own episode the same day that was all about building human connections in the online world. And essentially what I said is, I believe that's the most important episode I've ever done.
Mm.
Because it's not about a strategy, it's not about a tactic, but that mentality and mindset is, I think, the most important thing in what's missing and what kind of makes people go to the next level when they make that shift.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to see how challenging people find it to make human connection. And the way that we show up sometimes in marketing, we follow what so-and-so said or what some guru posted, and we attempt to duplicate that and then realize how inauthentic it feels and how it actually pushes people away, not in the good way of polarization. So for you, and somebody's hearing this, like, well, how do I even begin? I don't know who I am. How do I begin to create that connection on social media?
Well, what I would say is, you do know who you are.
Yeah.
Now, you've probably been playing a role like I was playing lawyer man,
Right.
and I'm open about this. Like, yes, I'm in a collared shirt, but I am actually a t-shirt guy. Again, people don't realize that men have body issues too. I don't like the way I look in t-shirts at the moment, and so I don't wear them as much as I would. And again, I share that willingly with people.
Yeah.
But what I'll tell you is, like, trying to be fancy if you're not fancy isn't going to work. At the same time, though, like, trying to be like informal if you actually are a formal person isn't going to work. You have to be whoever you are, because otherwise people are going to see through it. If you try to put on any kind of airs, people are going to realize it's not the real you. I think you need to do some self-work on some things. You have to, there's a lot of attributes I believe you need to cultivate in yourself, like being a giving person, being someone who doesn't view people as a transaction.
Mm-hmm.
That's not who you are now. You have to work to become that person. But ultimately, you got to be yourself. And if that means poop emojis and cursing in emails, fine. But the other thing is, just tell stories.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I think a lot of people miss. And people will say, well, nothing interesting happens, and things like that. You just need to start a journal and start noticing things. Like, one of the stories I tell in emails, it's actually one of my, it's kind of become a standard trope in my emails close to cart close. And it's about, don't do the walk of shame. And it came from, like, I would go out for walks at like 5 a.m. here in DC. And like, I just would see these people dressed like they were going out and at like 5 and 6 a.m. And I didn't get it. And I told my wife, who like eyes and says, they're doing the walk of shame, dummy. I said, but again, like, that's the kind of thing that can become a story. Just, you notice something and you notice a story. And that's the kind of thing that will help you connect with people.
It's so funny you say that, because that's when I first stepped into the online world, I felt like, oh, I don't have anything to share. What do I talk about? And I know this is a huge issue for a lot of newer entrepreneurs. And I started to notice the people that I love to follow, exactly that. They were just pulling really specific moments from their day and turning them into a story. And what I teach my peeps now is, like, everything's a story.
Yep.
If you think your life is quote unquote just regular, it's because you're in your world too much. That's like saying an Eskimo, like, you'd probably read a book about an Eskimo and think, wow, what an interesting lifestyle. But for an Eskimo, they might say the same thing. My life's just regular. Everybody lives this way.
Yeah. Well, and it's like little stuff, like, and it may be like random stories from your life from 20 years ago. Like today, I sent an email for my podcast, which is about the Dream 100, which is basically, connecting with people who already have your audience. And I told the story about how I met my wife, and this was like almost 25 years ago. She walked into a coffee shop. I didn't know her, but I found out we had mutual friends. So I basically told the story of how I figured, I'm going to, hang out with those people, and I get to hang out with her. And, it's like little things like that. Just make connections to things in your life that apply to whatever you're talking about, and people will relate to it and love it.
Absolutely. I love this. And I know I want to jump back, because before you were talking about, finding that transitional moment from, being the guy who wore the suit, being the lawyer, to being this online entrepreneur. And I know for my audience, a lot of them are in that transitional period, coming out of a corporate position into doing the online stuff, or maybe they're in network marketing and they're transitioning into creating their own coaching business. And there's a lot of fear and doubt that tends to come up for a lot of people. So what did you have to go through during that process?
Well, I mean, you're going to have to go through fear, and you're going to have to go through doubt. And this is, I like to tell people this, because imposter syndrome is real, But I also want you to understand, like, you're not alone, because I tell this story. I have a Harvard law degree, but for a long time I thought to myself, well, who am I to be teaching entrepreneurs about the legal stuff? And so think about that for a second. If I deal with that, everybody's going to deal with it. You're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
But, the best way to get over it is just do. And what I tell people is, and again, I mean, you have to obviously do, work at it and build skills, but nothing is going to help you get past the fear until you actually do it and see that you can do it. And then you're like, oh, there's nothing scary about this. And maybe it's the analogy of a roller coaster. I still don't like roller coasters, but I remember as a kid, I would cry the entire time my parents had me in line for that entire 45-minute lead up to going on the roller coaster. And then the darn thing wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And so it's that same thing. I think we all, when we're about or thinking about doing something new, we're in a line for a roller coaster and we are thinking about it and we're making it worse than it's actually going to be. And once you do it, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. So I think action is the key to actually making it through it.
That's everything. And it's so funny as you're saying this, I'm like, yeah, I think people don't realize the distinction between fear and danger.
Yeah.
Like if you're going on a roller coaster, you're buckled in, you're probably not going to die and fall out. The chances of that are so slight. You're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Like your life is not in danger. You do it, you take action, you live to tell the tale.
Yep. Yeah. And again, what I'll tell you is if you think you're dealing with something weird, imagine me having to try to explain to my parents what I'm doing with my Harvard law degree. They're like, wait, what are you doing on the internet? I don't understand. I mean, they still use AOL to give you a sense. And, so trying to explain that to them or to my other like lawyer friends and friends who are like experts and they're like, wait, so you're LegalZoom? I'm like, yeah, that's good. More like, yeah, basically, yeah, that's what I am. I'm LegalZoom. But you're going to deal with that when you make a change in your life, but it's fine. And just don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Did a lot of people like question you or try to convince you otherwise?
I mean, some people did. So it was ironic when I was first kind of going through the shift. And at the time, part of what I thought is I was really going to kind of change the kind of lawyering I was going to do, but still be a lawyer was a large part of what I thought at the time. And I don't know, some guy I knew, he was a legal recruiter who I'd met at some point, and he was coming through town and we had coffee. And he's like, he was feeding into this imposter syndrome. Well, how are you qualified to do that? How can you do that? And, it was this thing where I was qualified. There was no doubt. But still it wasn't what I had been doing. So he did. And again, my parents or my dad was just kind of like, doesn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like I was telling him, my hope, I currently have two companies, my law firm, LLC, and then my online business. And I basically told him that my hope, my belief, my goal is that by the end of this year, the law firm, it won't be shut down, but it will basically be shut down. I can't shut down the entity because I've got some ongoing that's coming in from old cases that go on for 2 or 3 years. But I basically told him my goal is to stop practicing law at the end of this year. And he, it blows his mind. How would you ever do that? And why would you do that? I just explained to him, well, number one, I enjoy what I'm doing better. And then also what I find is when you enjoy what you're doing, you'll be better at it. I mean, I am making money now without having to work at it. And I say that, I mean, I work, but I don't know about you, Jen, but sometimes I look up and it's, 6 or 7 o'clock and I don't realize it because I've just been having fun is kind of what I feel like I'm doing
all the time. Yeah.
I mean, I finally get the notion. And again, I mean, there's stuff that isn't fun, but any given day, I'm happy. I'm having a good day. And it was also easier for me to explain to people because in my old profession career as a lawyer, when I got an email, there was really no chance that it was going to be really good news. There was some chance it could be, kind of medium, like not really bad news. And then there was a chance that it's another shoe dropping. And it meant my life was going to suck for a few months. Nowadays, when I get an email, it's not a 50-50 shot, but there's a good chance that maybe it's somebody bought something, and so it's, it's more likely to just be something that's good.
Yeah.
So when you find that, it makes it a lot easier to kind of explain to people.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd love to get into a little bit of what online coaches need today to make sure that they are covered in the online space. I know a lot of my listeners are either in network marketing or they are transitioning and they're kind of starting from the beginning, or maybe they've been in it for a while and they're just like, wait, I need legal documents? Huh? I do? Since when? Oh no.
Yeah, so let's talk. Let me talk kind of at a high level first, and then
Yeah.
we'll get down to the actual documents. Because I
Perfect.
like to say that even before you get to the documents, you need to understand enough about the legal stuff to be able to spot if there's a potential issue. Uh,
Perfect.
and so, for example, you need to have a spidey sense when someone says, "Oh, just go grab that image from there and put it on your website or whatever." And you need to say, "Wait, can I do that or not?" And so really in our world, there's a few different areas you need to understand a little bit about. One of them is copyright law, which says basically you can't take other people's content without permission. That includes pictures. That includes like taking screenshots of people's websites, which a lot of people don't get. All that stuff not allowed. Now, most of it's never going to come to anything, but if you grab an image, a picture without permission, you're likely to get a nasty letter that demands money. And if you happen to get the wrong one, it's going to come from Getty Image and they're going to demand thousands of dollars and you're not going to have much of an option but to pay them. So know that you can't do that kind of stuff. Um, Similarly, you need to have a sense of what's an area of law called trademark law, which is all about branding. And it basically, in a nutshell, you can't use the same name that someone else is already using if it's likely to confuse consumers. And so that's it in a nutshell. But there's a lot of nuances, like a lot of words that end in preneur are actually trademarked, and people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, mompreneur is trademarked, which technically means you can't use it. You can't use that in your branding because someone else has the exclusive right to use it. And again, I may be wrong about mompreneur, but a lot of preneur words
Yeah.
are
Funny enough, I used to have a business with a business partner, and it was the word wellpreneur was in our course name. And I just got an email yesterday from someone who used it, and we had used it in like 2016. And obviously we haven't been business partners for several years. So who knows if she even had the trademark when we came out with it, but I was like, sure, I'll go change it. Like it was no big deal, but it's so funny because people really don't realize like your entire course, your program, your whole brand could be you have to do a whole change of everything.
Yeah. And again, I mean, they could, and with trademarks, you're right. Most times they're just going to ask you to change the name. They could come after you for something else, but mainly it's going to be you have to change the name, which again, if you think about it, if you have like an online course that you've already shot all the thing and you have to redo it because you used a name you're not allowed to use, it's a problem. Yeah. And so you need to understand those things. And what I like to tell people is this is a place where an ounce of prevention is easy to do. You figure it out. And as good as the name is, there's another one that's just as good or that'll work. And again, people freak out about course names and spend all this time coming up with a course name. I don't know about you. I've never bought a course because of the name ever. I mean, I can't think of one. I buy a course because I like the teacher and I like the content. And so spend way too much time.
I agree.
Worrying about these things. But you need to understand those areas of law, copyright and trademark. And then there's one other area, which is the right to publicity, which technically means you can't use my name. I can't use your name or your image or your likeness commercially without your permission. And it gets broader some places, like you can't use someone's signature. But basically, this comes into place with testimonials, with things like that. You can't use that without permission. So you need to understand those areas of law. That's the high level. Now let me talk about the agreements, because this is the big place. What I like to tell people is you need to have every agreement that's important to your business in writing. Ideally, it's a lawyer crafted document, a template, etc. But if you don't have that, just write something up yourself in plain English and get both people to sign it, because that's where most things go south. It could be with like an independent contractor who's working for you. It could be a business partner. It could be anything else. Just when you have a relationship, it needs to be in writing. And the reason you want it in writing is to keep people like me or the old me out of your life, because lawyers thrive on uncertainty. And where there's not a written agreement, there's uncertainty. And so you need to get that in writing. And I also like to tell people, going without written agreements, it's not just about the legal cost. It's not just about the financial cost. It's also about the personal cost. The story of how I started my law firm is that I had jumped into something like a typical entrepreneur, feet first, without dealing with this and without getting an agreement in writing. I joined these two guys who had a startup law firm. They'd started maybe a year earlier. This is back in 2010, and didn't have a written agreement. And I was treated fairly the whole time, had no complaints. Then my wife gets pregnant. And so I started talking to him saying, hey, we need to actually formalize this. Because the problem was I had all the downside risk and none of the guaranteed upside in the law firm. And we talked about it and talked about it. It came to a head when my daughter was 3 months old. And I remember the moment sitting there staring at my 3-month-old daughter in my arms on a Sunday night, knowing I was done at that firm. Literally, we went to the office that night, packed up my stuff, and I was done. The saddest part is that one of those two partners flew through Hurricane Sandy to get to my wedding, and I've not talked to him since 2014 because we didn't have a written agreement. That's the kind of thing that happens if you go without written agreements. So you need to get in the practice of using them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And actually I do want to jump back quickly to copyright law, or actually, you know what, let's stay with this for a second. Let's stay with the agreements. We'll come back to copyright law in a moment. So with the written agreements and with all of these pieces, there's a couple of different documents that entrepreneurs, specifically online coaches for sure, want to have in place if they're doing, whether it be guarantees of you're going to make X amount of dollars, you're going to lose X amount of weight, like all of those little nuanced things, I think a lot of newer coaches are not aware of.
Okay. Well, so let's start. One thing that kind of is before an agreement is your website document. You need a disclaimer that deals with a lot of those things like you're talking about. So your disclaimer is going to say, look, and among other things, it's going to say, I'm giving you information, not advice, take it or leave it. You, the user, you're the one who's responsible for your own actions. You can't blame me if this doesn't work. And it also will have the results are not typical type of language. So you need that. You also need a terms of use, which is, think of that as kind of the basic rules of the road for your website. It's kind of saying, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. It also will set, like if you have like basic products, it'll do things like set your basic refund policy if you had products, or if you had small, like an information product is like $17, you're not going to have a separate agreement for that. So you just have it in your website terms. All of those things are addressed there. So those things technically are not required, your disclaimer and your terms of use. One thing that is legally required is a privacy policy. Got to have it, no exceptions. You have to tell people what information you collect, what you do with it, why do you collect it, who do you share it with. And now with the European Union's GDPR, there's some other random things that you have to tell people. You have to tell them their rights, which is kind of weird that we as a company have to do that, but that's what the law is. And so I kind of, for my American audience, I say it's kind of like the Miranda warnings. You have to tell them what their rights are as consumers. So that is required, got to have it. And it's going to be a kind of big, ugly document. It's not really legal heavy. It's more technical heavy. It talks about the fact that you have a pixel, because you probably have a Facebook pixel on your website and things like that. So those are the basic documents. Everybody needs those. Then you say coaches. If you do one-on-one coaching, you need a coaching agreement, which you have individual clients sign. And that's, again, setting the basics of the relationship. You have to say what services you provide. And as a coach, it's probably sessions. It's probably, deals with how do they schedule their sessions and when can they cancel. So you probably, whatever your policy is 24 hours, 48, 72, whatever, you set that out. And then how do they pay you and when? You set all of that out so that that's just, again, there's no disputes. If 3 months from now there's a question, you just go back and look at the agreement and it sets out what you're providing, what you're paying, et cetera. So that's the basic coaching agreement. And then if you do group coaching, you're going to want something more like a course agreement that kind of talks about this and lays out what the different services are.
Yeah, these are really important pieces because I know people who have gone and launched courses without having these things in place. And one of the big things, they didn't have their refund policy clearly outlined. Guys, guess what? If you don't have a clear refund policy in place, if somebody decides they don't like your course, they can go ahead and reach right into your bank account and take their money back. And you've got nothing.
So I've got a funny, it's funny because it's not me. And she's told me I could tell this story. So
Okay.
one of my friends is Tarzan K, who's a copywriter.
Mhm.
She called it a mastermind, but really it was a group coaching program about emails and copywriting and everything else. And I think it was like a 12-week program. And she, even though she knew me in advance and knew about my products, she meant to get a course agreement and forgot. And then like 9 or 10 weeks in, someone said, this wasn't what I expected. I want my money back. And she had put a ton of time into trying to help this person and really coach them. And I had seen it because I was part of the group coaching program. So I'd seen it in some of these sessions. And she kind of had to just decide that she was going to bite the bullet and give her money back. And this was for a group coaching program. So it was, I think she said it was $4,500 that she just had to refund because she had no choice. She could have fought it, but I told her, if you hire me, I'm going to charge you $4,500 probably out the door before you're going to know one way or the other. And so she just had to bite that bullet. If she had a written agreement and she says this now, would have been a no question. Nope. There's no refund. So that is a key. You've got to have it for any group programs, online programs, et cetera. Again, if you do individual coaching, you'll deal with that in your agreement, but it's probably not as big a deal. I mean, probably they have to pay you whatever they paid you already, but they don't have to pay you going forward.
Right. Yeah. And guys, if you do want access, you're saying, well, guys, how do I get these documents? Do I have to write them myself? Do I have to hire a lawyer? Bobby has a lot of awesome templates that you can just like plug and play. It's going to be a lot more specific and catered to the online world because this is literally what he does. And it's going to cost you a lot less than hiring a lawyer.
Yeah. And look, I always like to say to people, there's kind of a hierarchy of good. I mean, hiring a lawyer to do it custom for you is the best with a caveat. You've got to make sure they actually know your business. And what I mean by that is I've had entrepreneurs come to me who went to like some random business lawyer in town and had them draft like their website policies. And they paid these guys thousands of dollars to do it for them. And they came and I was like, what the, sorry, I'm not going to use the actual words I use, but I'm like, this is not correct at all.
Yeah.
And I asked them what happened. And both entrepreneurs told me the same story, that the business lawyer said, well, I don't really know that, but if you can get me some samples, I can customize them for you. And I'm like, no. If a lawyer says that to you, run. I mean, because you should not be paying a lawyer who doesn't know the area of law. The lawyer should say, not my area, can't do it.
Right.
And so like people will come to me with areas and I said, not my area, don't know it, can't deal with it, can't help you. But so getting a lawyer who knows your business to really dig in and draft it specific to you is the best. Below that is getting a template. And then below that, do it yourself. That's better than doing nothing. And the worst thing, do nothing, because that leaves you exposed.
So good. So good. So I did want to jump back quickly to copyright law, because actually one of our mastermind friends, Tyler McCall, he had shared a really awesome post on Instagram recently about people, screenshotting and copying his work. And that actually happened to me the other day too, is one of my posts. Someone messaged me and said, "You've been memed. Did you actually write this?" And I was like, hell yeah, that shit came from my soul. Are you kidding me? That came from like blood, sweat, and tears. And somebody had taken a screenshot of it and cut out my name. And I was like, that's really messed up. And then eventually I was like tagged in it or whatever. But this is happening all the time.
Yeah. Well, technically, even if they'd left your name in, if they screenshotted it, it's not allowed. Let me step back from,
because that's become like the norm on Instagram, where you just screenshot different things and you share it, and everyone has done it, myself included, and I haven't thought anything of it. And then when it happens to you, you're like, well, wait a minute, that was my work.
Yeah. So let me back up. So let me step out of social media for a second.
Okay.
Outside of social media, if you can't take a screenshot, you can't, with images, it's the right click save as problem, because that's the actual mouse, how you save an image. That you're not allowed to do. But screenshotting is what a lot of people do as well. Now, in social media, there are some exceptions. And what those exceptions are is basically this. Whatever the social media site says is allowed in their terms of use, you can do. Because when you as a user post something on social media, you are saying that other users can use it consistent with the terms of that social media site. Because if you didn't have that, for example, if someone shared my Facebook post, that technically is copyright infringement, because I have the exclusive right to make, copy, distribute, etc., that post. But under the terms of use, when I post something on Facebook, people are allowed to share it because that's the nature of the system. The same thing on Instagram. And this is one of those things I'm always like not clear on because I'll be honest, I've not read Instagram's terms of use in time recently. But people do that.
That's not what you do as you go to bed. You don't just sit and, thumb through Instagram's terms.
No. So, I mean, I've done it with like YouTube because people always ask me about like embedding YouTube video.
Oh, okay.
And, like the answer is if you use YouTube's embeddable player, you're allowed to do it because that's allowed within the terms. But so with Instagram, like people do that thing where they like, and I don't even know what's like regramming, I think they call it. I don't know what it, and my service now does it for me every once in a while. Again, if you do that with credit, with all of that, no one's going to complain. Is it technically allowed? I'm not 100% sure. But the minute you start cutting people's stuff out, that's not okay. And it's a bit different if you're taking a quote because quotes themselves, quotes are kind of messy. Meaning like if you just took the word. So if I took your quote, didn't include the design and just use the words again, it may or may not be a problem. But if I literally take a copy of your pain, the image you had and use it, that's not allowed. So don't do it. Again, most people are going to be fine. If you say, hey, I want to use this. Can I, do I have your permission? I'm going to, give credit, et cetera. Most people are going to say, of course you can. I mean, why wouldn't you give that permission as long as they're going to give you credit?
Right. I remember seeing, maybe it's probably about a year ago, I think it was a surf photographer. And do you know what I'm talking about? You're nodding.
So I heard about a skateboard.
Or maybe that's what it was. And a big brand used it and didn't want to pay/give credit.
Yeah. Well, no, I think they gave him credit,
but
they didn't want to pay him. They were giving him credit. They were, they were tagging. But again, and this is what I'll tell you is photographers are a different breed. And I don't say that in a way that's bad, but photographers are very proprietary about their stuff for the most part. So that's why like an image is the thing that is going to get you in the most trouble. But if you were to do this regramming of someone who's a photographer on social media, they're more likely to get mad. And photographers are different in like, this is the one kind of like service agreement. Like if I hire a copywriter to write copy for me, it's just assumed when they write it, I'm going to own it. Photographers are different. Like if you go get your headshots taken, you don't own your headshots. Most of the time, you don't even have a right to put an overlay on top of it on your website, which people don't realize because photographers are different. So be very careful about photographs, about images, things like that. Just don't do it. I have like a stable of stock image sites I go to if I need a stock image. Unsplash, Pixabay, Pexels. There are none that are really great, but I use them because it's better than having no images.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this is so good. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you feel is like really, really important for the online coach to?
So the testimonials is the other thing.
Oh, yes.
So, again, this is not a huge problem because for the most part, if someone's going to give you a testimonial, they're not going to mind. But I mentioned earlier that there's this concept of the right to publicity, which says that you have to get people's permission before you use their name, image, or likeness for a commercial purpose. And a testimonial, that's a commercial purpose. You're using it to promote yourself, advertise, etc. And again, the other thing is that some states require that permission to be in writing. So you can't just ask them and have them say it. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be overly specific. If people say yes to you via email, give you permission, that's a writing. If people, click a box on the internet when they're submitting it, it's okay. So what I do when I get testimonials, I use SurveyMonkey as my first thing. And it has at the beginning a paragraph that explains I'm going to use this. And then I ask them to click a box at the bottom that gives me permission to use this stuff. You can get a formal release. I've got a formal release template. But the point is just get their permission and get it in writing where you have a record that they gave you permission to use the stuff. And a little tweak or a little trick, I guess I should say, is if you have a group coaching program, put it into the terms of the agreement that anything they post in the group, you can use. That way you can screenshot those Facebook testimonials or Facebook comments about how great your product is, and you don't have to go and get a separate permission from them.
This is so good because I know a lot of people do use that, but they don't have that in their terms. Oh, this is so important.
And like I said, again, this is where, like I say, when I first started doing this and tried to sell that course, I was a lawyer first and an entrepreneur second. Now I like to tell people, look, I'm going to tell you what the legal stuff is, but then I'm also going to give you my business person response. I don't want to say testimonials don't matter or getting a release doesn't matter. You should do it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the place where, if you think about it, people are least likely to get mad at you because they're your raving fans. I mean,
Right.
they'll let you use stuff, but you should just get in the practice of using the thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I like to tell people. Just get in the practice of getting the permissions and getting things right and kind of
Mm-hmm.
the I's dotted and the T's crossed.
Yeah. Well, actually, with the testimonial thing, I know there was a few people within the more of the higher influencer space. They recorded a video for someone. Many months later, they were using it to run an ad. And because this individual who's a big influencer was saying, hey, hire this person, it was selling the heck out of this other person's stuff. The only problem was they were like, well, wait a minute. I'm the reason people are buying. Why am I not getting an affiliate kickback?
Yeah.
This should be an affiliate partnership. And so, having those things in writing is going to, really clarify whether or not, sure, maybe that person I don't know what happened if they turned around and said, you know what, you're right. Let me give you half of anybody who clicked and bought from this ad. But
so you have to think about that, but also especially if you're working with an influencer, they may give you permission to use it for some things, but not others.
right.
I have a testimonial from, one of our mutual friends, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
She asked me not to use it in Facebook ads because she does a lot of Facebook advertising herself, doesn't want, people to see the video and not have it associated with her company, which I get. I totally get,
Yep.
and that's fine. But again, this is the kind of thing where this isn't so much about getting the release. It's about working out the details in advance so and again, to me, it would be a no-brainer, even, if she had signed a release and asked me not to me, the relationship's more important than whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you don't have it in writing, they could come back and complain, say, no, I didn't think you were going to use it there. You're not allowed to do that. And
Right.
so you be careful about those things.
Absolutely. I wouldn't want to be blindsided like that either, so this is so important to think about these things, get these things in place, and just be protected. And I think there's a big piece to just the energy of knowing that you're covered versus now that you guys have this information, being in that state of oh no, I'm not covered. What am I going to do? Because I know there are coaches who are afraid to take action and put their stuff out there because they know they don't have something in place and they don't want to get screwed.
Well, and so
but like you said, write something yourself to start.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that to me because you mentioned that, and our friend Tiffany mentioned the same thing to me, which I never thought that was the problem. To me, and again, maybe this is the difference between, a man and a woman, which I like to say women are much smarter because they're 80% of my audience. But I would never, I always thought it was just people didn't know they had to do this stuff. But yeah, I understand now there are a lot of people who are afraid to put things out there because they're afraid that they don't have stuff buttoned up. And what I like to say is you don't have to be that scared about it. You take some basic steps and, just write something out yourself if you have to start. Find a resource you can trust, get the stuff, and you can get this stuff taken care of. And if the legal stuff is what's stopping you from building a business, don't let it be. It definitely should not be the thing that stops you.
Yeah. Well, I think people take the unknown and then make it this enormous mountain to climb when in reality, it doesn't have to be this really complicated thing. There are people like you in the online space who have really simplified this process for online coaches and made it pretty step by step to make sure that you're covered. Yeah. And I think a big thing too is people will say, well, in order for me to afford to hire a lawyer and get these things in place, I need to get clients. So it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And I'm yeah.
Well, and I totally get that. And that was actually part of why my high ticket detour was a detour. I was getting people on the phone who literally had not they had sold maybe $100 worth of stuff. And there's no way I'm going to suggest to them, you should pay me $5,000, $10,000 at that point. No, that makes no sense. I mean, that is not a good use of your resources. So again, a good use of your resources. I mean, there's some stuff like I said, the privacy policy you have to have. You can't go without that. That's why I've started giving that away. I'm just like, here, you can have that to people. But the other stuff, just write it yourself when you first start, if you have to. And again, then you can find people who are going to make this stuff really affordable so you can get these things in place and deal with it. But I definitely tell people, don't buy my stuff if you literally don't have a business yet and don't have an idea for your business and really aren't moving forward. If you have the money, great. I think legal stuff should be something you deal with early and get it pretty much buttoned up and you don't have to deal with it again. But let's make sure you have a business idea first. Like I tell people that on trademarks, like you have to pay to register a trademark. And I tell people, I say, let's make sure that you're going to use this first. Like, let's make sure it's a viable idea before we go spend a bunch of money trademarking a bunch of stuff. Because I've seen people do that. And then, I don't know about you, but with me, it's not trademarks. With me, it's like freebies. I recently created
so many,
which didn't go anywhere, but I paid, I don't know, a couple $1,000s to get some freebies that were going to be used on the back end made. And now I'm like, nah, that was a good use of money, but it is what it is. I mean, now, I'm at a point where, I don't want to say I chalk those up to no big deal, but if I, spend $1,000 on something and it doesn't work out, it's like, okay, it wasn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
And your listeners, you'll get there if you build your business where, you can make those decisions and don't have to worry about it.
Yep. No, and I see people, like you were saying before, getting stressed out about finding the right course name and do I need to trademark it? And I don't know, at least for me, I'm like, that's usually the last thing I'm thinking about. I'm like, I want all my other ducks in a row. I want to make sure I'm not, getting people who want refunds coming in and all that type stuff, which doesn't ever really happen. But I think part of it is because I energetically know that I'm covered. And so I don't come in with that sense of, oh no, what's going to happen?
Yeah. And it's so funny. Like I see a lot of entrepreneurs and it's, I don't know where this comes from, but a lot of people, when they're creating a course, their biggest concern is that someone else is going to rip them off. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, number one, it's going to happen. If you create good content, it's going to happen. So, accept that. But more importantly, like, let's get to that point. Let's get to the point that people are ripping us off and then we can deal with it. But I will see people who like, well, they're so afraid and won't launch because they're afraid someone might rip them off. Like literally I saw a post yesterday. I don't remember what group, somewhere on Facebook. Someone has been doing like these, some kind of trainings in a closed Facebook group. And she did this as a beta and was thinking about moving it to a Kajabi site, but then was like, but people can share passwords for Kajabi. And what if people, and I'm like, no, just do it.
Yeah.
That's a good problem to have. And I was like, people could share their Facebook password. I mean, people could share this stuff anyway. So
yeah, on Facebook, you could just go save the video.
Exactly. Well, I mean, right. I mean, and that's what I'll tell people. I mean, there's a way around all this stuff.
Right.
Like people are ripping off people all the time. I mean, I literally could just, put my screen on to maximize and record my screen. I've got ScreenFlow, so I can just do that and I can use a video. I mean, it's not that hard.
We're giving away all of the ways.
I mean, but I'm like, I literally don't worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
So I hear people worry about that and they worry about that with their refund policy. To me, like, I think, and again, I'm weird on this. I do not like the show your work refund policy. To me, I'm going to say no refunds, or I'm just going to say, I don't want to deal with that other stuff. But I'll see people like literally some guy was going to do like a 7 or no, it wasn't a 7. It was like an 8-day refund policy. Cause like his course was 9 days long. And I was like, okay, I mean, you can do that if you want to.
Yeah.
But I just don't worry about those things.
Right.
I think you're probably the same. I mean, I've got a policy in place and it is what it is. And like today I got a thing, like one of the people on my payment plan evidently didn't pay and someone was canceled. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to worry about it. It happens and we deal with it.
Absolutely. And I think too, guys, like if you're putting out amazing content, then, and your course is incredible and it's solving a clear problem, you're not going to get as many refunds. And then when you do start to grow and you're getting those testimonials and people are loving your stuff and you reach a broader audience, especially if you're doing like an evergreen funnel or something and you're, getting referrals from all over the place, you're going to get refunds. They're going to happen. They're going to come in.
Yeah. But
somebody's going to buy your course. It's not the right fit.
But see, we're coming back full circle because realistically, the best way to avoid refunds is connect with people on a human level.
Yep.
And people are buying from you for that, not for the content. I mean, look, people, yes, maybe some people buy my stuff because it's cheaper than a competitor's. But by and large, people buy my stuff because they connect with me, they like me, and so they want to buy from me. And if you do that, and if you work on building that human connection and doing that stuff right, the other stuff takes care of itself.
Amen. I think that's a perfect place to end. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about where people can go to learn more about you and get a hold of your free, well, it's the free privacy policy?
Yeah, it's free privacy policy. But so you can find me online. So like on Facebook, you can just find Bobby Klinck, but my business page also is Your Online Genius. My website is youronlinegenius.com. Soon enough, I'm going to transition to bobbyklinck.com, but haven't done that yet. But everything will get redirected, so it'll be seamless. If you want to grab my free privacy policy, that's at youronlinegenius.com/free privacy policy. I'm not inventive with links. I explain what things are and you get it. So again, youronlinegenius.com/free privacy policy. It's obviously an email sign up, but that's where you can get that. And then on Instagram, I'm at Bobby Klinck.
Amazing. And we're going to link all of that up for you guys so that you can go get a hold of it. And if you had some big ahas or some moments today where you were like, damn, you just spoke to me, definitely connect with us over on Instagram at HeyJenCasey and at Bobby Klinck and let us know what was that moment, because we would love to connect with you and continue the conversation over there. So Bobby, thank you so much for sharing your online genius with us today.
Well, so you see, you were going to try to end this thing, but now I've got to say something. This is a common misconception. And this is why I need to kind of change the brand. The brand was never that I was the online genius.
Oh.
The brand, that course, the flop course that I spent $10,000 on was called Safeguard Your Online Genius. So it was all about my customers' online genius, but everybody thinks I'm saying I'm the online genius, which is why I've got to rebrand. But yes, so go out, listeners, viewers, and safeguard and protect your online genius. You know, I'm just here to help you along the way. But
well, you also shared your online genius with us today, so thank you for that. I know this is going to be some big breakthroughs for a lot of our listeners, so I really appreciate you for your time.
Yeah, I loved it. It was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye, guys.